All right, for this next segment, I need to review what my story is on this SRO situation. It's kind of related, but I waited to tell this story here, and I apologize. I'm going to have to do this as quick as possible, so I'm going to be speaking fast because I know we want to get out of here, but I want to tell the story here where it can be recorded in the minutes, where it can be recorded on video, and where it can be streamed live and not on social media where it can be deleted. Most of you know this story, and this is my version, and the story really begins before I was a commissioner, but through discussions I was able to fill in the missing pieces, and I will invite any corrections if I've said anything wrong, and I wish Representative Kidwell could be here. But maybe he can pull this up and look at it later. Now, most county residents, when I go out and talk about it, do not even know what an SRO is. And these are sworn law enforcement officers that are placed in the schools for security. Now, our SROs were funded several years ago through a tax increase of 1 cent. Not only did this help pay for the SROs, but it paid for security improvements to the buildings. These improvements have been completed, so the full 1 cent allocation, I guess, has always been available. The plan called for 13 SROs, which would cover each school. It should be said that these SROs require special training, so you can't hire anybody to be an SRO. It takes a while for these positions to get filled. And as of today, there's really only 12 SROs, and everybody talks about the 13, but there's only 12 as far as I know. The plan was working fine. These SROs were doing a great job. School officials were concerned, however, about how the sheriff pulled these SROs out occasionally for transport duty and other needs. When asked about this, the sheriff said that these people work for him and not the schools. And when asked if the SROs could notify the office when they left, the sheriff said no. Thankfully, we had no serious incidents, but there were many cases where the SRO was needed and he was not there, or they were not there. Now, this is early spring, and we're just hearing about COVID-19 for the first time. And early spring is the time for what we call budget workshop, and this is where department heads come together and share their budget needs for the upcoming year. In that workshop, the Sheriff's Department asked for 5 new deputy positions and money to pay bonuses for the existing deputies. When asked why they needed the 5 positions, the answer was because. I think Mr. Richardson said it was a little more than that, but basically said just because. It was decided to allocate the money for one or the other, but not both. The budget passed, and the money was used for the bonuses. Now, this was July. We're getting into the pandemic deep. Many were getting infected. People were dying. Businesses were being closed down. My business was closed. I'm still dealing with financial problems today because of the loss of revenue. In response, the commissioners enacted a hiring freeze. The future was uncertain. So now it's October, November. There were nationwide protests concerning police brutality. We had incidents here in Washington. City councils and county commissioners across the county thought it wise to defund the police in an effort to control them. There was no discussion on defunding the police here. So the sheriff saw this as an opportunity to put out a press release which said the Beaufort County commissioners were defunding him. This press release went to the media outlets from the capital to the coast. Even judges were informed. At the next commissioner meeting, the room was full of media. In that meeting, Chief Rose explained how not providing those 5 positions was an act of defunding the department. Most of the commissioners reminded him of the actions from the budget workshop and that these 5 positions could be discussed at the next budget session. We just talked about that. The meeting ended with the sheriff bursting through the back door and calling everyone a liar. I was not a commissioner at the time, but I was sitting in the back of the room. It was the only time I've seen the sheriff appear before the commissioners. Now it's Friday, November 13th. The sheriff issued another press release. In that release, he mentions the 5 positions and says he's going to stop providing the SROs to the schools. He gives the schools 90 days until termination. The school, who was struggling with the effects of pandemic and how to educate kids with buildings being closed, were totally caught off guard. They came to the commissioners for direction. They were told to meet with the sheriff to see if a compromise could be made. That meeting took place at the superintendent's office. Only the sheriff came. The school was represented by the superintendent and 2 others. In that meeting, the sheriff said that their relationship with the schools was over and they needed to seek other methods of security. He was asked twice. The meeting ended. The schools were instructed to seek alternatives. The election had occurred. I was now a commissioner. One thing that occurred about the same time was the sheriff ordered a deputy to email over and over to all of the school board members the transport information that occurred for the sheriff's department. I guess this was to justify why he needed the 5 positions and why he pulled SROs to do these transports. I have copies of these emails, but I would have to go into closed session to share them. You see, this is a violation of HIPAA laws, and the email stopped when this was explained to the sheriff. The school started writing their requests for bids for private security. It was here they realized that this really might be a better way to do things, but it depended on funding. I think the sheriff office realized at the same time that this funding would be moved to pay for it. So the bids were returned, and interesting to note, the Beaufort County Sheriff's Office decided not to bid. They felt they could not provide the services that the schools requested. They cited 6 points. The companies were asked to come in for an interview and a time was set. The interview occurred and the company was chosen, and they were asked to send a pricing schedule. This was done, and I thought it important to ask for a special called meeting to discuss these figures with the other commissioners. This was denied by Chairman Waters, saying that the numbers could be discussed at the April 5th meeting. It was about this time that we were hearing that Chairman Waters had to vote to shut this thing down. My math said otherwise. I felt that if he could not get it stopped, he would at least delay it long enough so that the schools would have no choice but to keep the current SRO situation. Once I learned that the schools had the contract, and I knew the superintendent was okay with that contract, I made the motion to accept the contract. The schools needed direction, and we gave it to them. The details are being worked out now. So let's review. We have a sheriff who appears not to want to provide SRO services to the schools. We have a sheriff department that admits it can't provide the service requested by the schools. The schools have a security company that can meet and possibly exceed these needs. I was elected to make the hard decisions. This was not. But the story does not end there. I think we can agree the sheriff has created this problem in order to get his way. He did not count on the outcome and now must live with it. This could affect the lives of 12 great people. Many are my friends. Not one time did the sheriff speak on their behalf. I just completed an ethics course given by the Institute of Government. In that course, mock meetings were shown in detail as what not to do as a commissioner. I must say that our chairman could be a poster child for this course. In the past week, he has been relentless in posting to Facebook negative posts about me and my wife, who was chairman of the Board of Education, and had very little to do with this. You have been an embarrassment to the county. Anybody with internet experience knows when you post something and then take it down, it's probably untrue. Frankie takes all of his posts down, so nothing he has said must be true. I can recognize this behavior by our chairman. I've seen it many times. Usually it's around Christmas time, and it is in the toy section of Walmart. This behavior is expected from kids not getting their way. Not you, Mr. Chairman. Now, I know where you'll go with this. My wife and I shouldn't have run for office if our skin is not thick enough to take criticism. I'll make a deal with you. We will grow thicker skin and take criticism better if you will grow some gonads and lead like you were elected. Thank you.
Are you finished?
I am finished.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.